The Star Sport podcast is brought to you by Access Credit Union. Access Credit Union, funding dreams for over 50 years.
Close your eyes and pull like a dog.
And a new Irish record for Phil Healy, 22.99.
Christy Cooney hands over the Sam Maguire Cup to Graham Canty, Cork All-Ireland champions for the 7th time ever.
Hello and welcome to the Star Sport podcast. My name is Dylan Mangan of the Southern Star and I'm joined in studio today by Star Sport editor Kieran McCarthy. Before we get into things, just give our listeners a gentle reminder to please rate, review and subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify and YouTube as well. The Star Sport podcast is brought to you in association with our friends at Access Credit Union. Access Credit Union, where your bank really does matter. Choose Credit Union, choose local, choose community. Now, our special guest on this week's podcast is Bantry kickboxer Tony Stephenson, who's heading to the European Games in Krackow in a couple of weeks, or is it this week?
He's flying out next week.
Flying out next week as a member of Team Ireland. Tony is a world and European kickboxing champion already, but this is the first year the sport has been included in the European Games. So it's a huge deal for Tony, huge deal for the sport in general. Kieran caught up with him earlier and they spoke about the significance of the next few weeks, how kickboxing can improve your confidence and a whole lot more as well. It's a really interesting chat and one worth sticking around for later on. But first, Kieran, there's only one real place we can start this week, and that's with Cork's statement win against Mayo in the Gaelic grounds on Sunday. I don't want to take all the credit, but I did say last week that we could be here talking about a big Cork win, that they were due a scalp of sorts, and they played really well in the first half, and that start of the second half, you're like, oh God, they're
looked in a spot of water, yeah.
And then they came back. Now we'll talk about the draw in a while. They drew Roscommon at home in the preliminary quarterfinals. But what did you make of the game itself?
Absolutely brilliant. This is the result that this Cork football team needed. The result that this Cork group needed. It's the first Division 1 scalp in a couple of years. You've got to go back to the Munster semi-final in 2020 during COVID times when Cork beat Kerry. And before that, I think you're going back, I saw Summers, it's 2012 since Cork last beat a Division 1 team before 2020. So you cannot underestimate the significance of this result for this group of Cork footballers. We had an interview with John Cleary in last week's Southern Star when he was talking about the steps and the progress that this Cork team is making. And one of those steps, and we spoke about it last week, was beating a higher ranked team, beating a Division 1 team. And Cork went out and they did that on Sunday. And it's not just that Cork beat Mayo, it's the manner in which they achieved that result. Because at one stage in the second half, Cork were down by 6 points and they were staring at defeat. And that wasn't unexpected in one sense because it's a highly fancied Mayo team. They'd won the Division 1 league title earlier in the year. They were backed to beat Cork. So to see Mayo 6 points up midway through that second half, for many, that's the way the game is going to go. But it showed the strength and resilience and character of this Cork side that they battled back, kept Mayo scoreless for the rest of the game, rattled off, was it 1-6 themselves to win this game by 3 points. And a special nod to Stephen Sherlock, the super sub. He came off the bench, the Bards man, to score 1-5. It's almost dangerous territory for him in one sense because you don't want to be that super sub as in to come off and rescue your team. But it's going to be an interesting conundrum for John Cleary and the management team. Now, what do you do with Stephen Sherlock, especially with the game coming up this weekend?
Yeah, there's like a lot of people have been asking for him to start and he's put himself in a good position to start now. But on the flip side, you point it and say if you can do that off the bench against Roscommon, you're staying on the bench. And
that's exactly it. And Sherlock did the same against Kerry a couple of weeks before he came off the bench in the second half and he got a couple of good scores there. So with Cork, they want to finish the game with a strong team as well. So are you better holding Sherlock in reserve for the second half? Maybe that's the role that he has to play this year. So Cork fans will be looking with interest at the team news later in the week. But back to the significance of the win against Mayo, huge for this group. And I'm delighted for them because they put in so much hard work. And over the last couple of years, they've suffered some heavy defeats and some big defeats. So for Cork to beat a big team like Mayo, get the result that they wanted, turn out another good performance, I think it bodes well for the future. And just on performance, and we touched it during the league as well, Dylan. Cork are now they're knitting together performance after performance after performance, and it's a consistency that they're striving to get. They're definitely not perfect at it. We saw that in the league. There were some days that they were below average, some days that they just didn't perform. But what we've had now, they beat Louth away. They ran Kerry really, really close and could possibly and maybe should have won that game. And now they beat a very good Mayo team. So that's three really strong performances in this group phase of the championship. So that bodes well for the future. That bodes well for the progression and development of this team. But the season isn't over.
Yes, still more games to come, hopefully more than one as well. But I just want to talk about the last period of the game, that period where Cork scored 1-6 to Mayo's nothing, because we've spoken a lot about how John Cleary has been trying to improve the fitness of the team. And it was very clear in the last 15-20 minutes of that game that Cork actually had more staying power than Mayo. That's
exactly it. And John Cleary again made that point in last week's Southern Star. And it's an interview you can read online. So just head over to our website and you'll read John Cleary's thoughts on that. When he was speaking about the fitness of this group, and this Cork group is fitter than the group that Cork worked with last year, because they got a good pre-season in there. And Cleary feels that his team now are well able to last the 70 minutes. So that means they can go toe-to-toe and stride for stride with the best teams in the country. We saw it again in the Gaelic grounds on Sunday. Cork lasted the full game against Mayo. We saw it in Páirc Uí Chaoimh 2 weeks earlier. Cork went all the way with Kerry. And again, that's another positive indicator for what's to come. What Cleary wanted to see was Cork to be more clinical in the big moments of the big games. And that's what we saw on Sunday. And I think that's what really pleased John Cleary, that Cork took their chances in a big game with a lot at stake. And again, go back to Stephen Sherlock with his 1-5. But you'd Chris O'Jones coming off the bench to get a point. You'd John O'Rourke from Carbery Rangers came off the bench to get a score as well. So you had that contribution from the bench, which is what Cork wanted. And go back to the game against Kerry the week before, or the 2 weeks before, you'd Sherlock and O'Mac Sweeney coming off the bench. And I think both kicked 2 points that day. So that's another plus point for Cork. So a lot of positives going into the game against Roscommon this weekend, and it's a good draw for both counties. Like the beauty now is that Cork have home advantage, and that's brilliant, and it shows the permutations that were at play on Sunday, Dylan, where if Mayo scored that late free, Aidan O'Shea had a chance. If he'd scored that, then Cork would have been away in a preliminary quarter-final this weekend. But when Aidan O'Shea's shot came up short, Cork cleared the ball and got out of there. And
do you think they knew? Do you think Mayo knew that they needed to score? Because it didn't. It didn't seem. It felt almost like they were trying to get a goal to level it up.
Like you would think that in planning for a game like this, that the players are aware of kind of permutations A, B, C, D, and E. That the Mayo camp knew, if we're losing, we can't lose by X amount because such a thing will happen. So it was a strange decision, because whether he was going for a point or just to drop it in, I'm not too sure. But Cork won't care too much right now, because Cork came out smelling of roses, got the win that they wanted, got a 3-point victory as well, which is enough for home advantage this weekend against Roscommon. So it was a really good day at the office, but they'll have to park it almost straight away, because the focus now is all about Roscommon and trying to build on this. And what we've seen the last couple of weeks, it's just we've seen the potential of this Cork group, and they're starting to, like I said, tread those back-to-back performances together, and they need to go to the well again on Saturday. Maybe dig even deeper against Roscommon. They're a hell of a good side as well. So it's interesting, and I think we're all looking forward to the weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. We don't know what day that game is on yet, do we?
We're recording this on Monday afternoon, so quite soon. I think the details of that are going to come out. So just check with any of our Southern Star social media, and we'll have details of that match up there.
And the most important thing is that it will be at home. I think if that point had gone in, be away to Galway instead.
Definitely
huge
at home.
Difference.
Definitely at home.
And you mentioned that both counties would be happy with the draw.
Yeah.
Like, why will Cork be happy with a Roscommon draw?
I think Cork will be happy first that it's a home draw, and they're up against a Roscommon team that, while it's a good Roscommon team, they're not an unbeatable Roscommon team either. We saw that from the weekend. So even though Roscommon fans are probably thinking, oh, this is a good draw, coming down to Cork and taking on the Rebels, I think both camps will be quite happy because it's an opportunity for both to advance to the quarterfinals. And the Cork team right now, I'd say the lads just cannot wait for next weekend. They'll be high in confidence. They'll be springing their step this week, and so there should be. But the main thing is keep the feet grounded and build on what they achieved against Mayo. So both counties will fancy their chances, and that should lead to a kind of hopefully an open game. I know they've met in the league a couple of times over the last few years. The last time was the opening game of Division 2 last year. Roscommon got promoted in 2022, so there's a kind of a bit of a familiarity to the sides as well. But the fact it's on at home in Cork, I think that's just great for us. And what would be super now is to see the Cork support come out in numbers, whether it's Saturday or Sunday, and it's likely to be Saturday. With the hurlers out of action the last couple of weeks, there's no reason why we can't get a big Cork support at Páirc Uí Chaoimh this weekend to give these footballers the support that they deserve. We saw it against Kerry a couple of weeks ago. I think it was only just on 14,000 in Páirc Uí Chaoimh that day. But in the second half, when the Cork fans got behind the team, you could hear like the decibel levels like really raised inside the stadium. You could really hear it. And I think the players appreciated that too. So hopefully we'll get a big Cork support this weekend.
Yeah, I think the fact they're on a bit of a good run now as well. Like a lot of the people who went to the Kerry game would have been impressed with the performance. Then they see a victory over Mayo as well. So it's all kind of a feel-good factor is there at the moment. So hopefully people will turn out for that. We'll obviously be speaking about that on next week's podcast, so please tune in next week. But we'll move on now to another issue that came up over the weekend. We were speaking on the podcast last week about dual players and fixture clashes, and at the weekend, Libby Coppinger was one of the 4 dual players. She played for Camogie team at Páirc Uí Chaoimh in the morning, hopped in the car, went up to Galway and came on in the second half there as well. So give us an update on that whole situation.
We spoke about it on last week's podcast, Dylan, and it was a mess then, and it was still very messy over the weekend. So as last week progressed, it was decided to split up the dual players. So Libby Coppinger and Aoife Healy were with the Camogie team, while Orla Cahalan and Hannah Looney were going with the footballers. But it turned out then that Orla Cahalan actually broke her foot in Cork Ladies football training last Thursday night. So she obviously couldn't line up with the footballers, and she'll be out of action for a good few weeks. So whether she'll see championship action again this summer for either camp, I'm not too sure. Probably looks unlikely. So then Libby Coppinger and Aoife Healy played with the Cork Camogie team. That was, I think it was a 3-3 on Saturday afternoon at Páirc Uí Chaoimh, and it's a game that Cork won. They beat down to get their championship campaign back on track. But what we didn't know, what we learned kind of very soon after, was that Libby and Aoife hopped into a car driven by Libby's mom, and they went straight up the road to the Pearse Stadium up in Galway for the Cork and Galway ladies football game that threw in at 7:30. And they only landed up, I think, around 7:45, 10:50. So the game was actually on. It was midway through the first half when the 2 players landed up. And it turns out then that Libby was actually brought on in the second half. I think the second half was only 10-15 minutes old when Libby was brought on. So it's, in one sense, it's nuts. It really is nuts that Libby Coppinger plays the full game for the Cork Camogie team on Saturday afternoon, has to get into a car, which
it can't be good for the hamstrings to get straight into the car and sit down for a couple of hours.
2.5-3/4 hours in the car sitting down. Even though she did her warm down in Páirc Uí Chaoimh and got changed and all that, like you're coming off the back of an inter-county game. You're sitting in the car for that length of time. You're driving up to Galway. Then you're landing up while the game is on. Obviously, she did a warm up there, but then to be brought on in the second half of a senior inter-county championship game, after playing a senior inter-county championship game earlier that day in a different code, like it's just it kind of highlights what Libby's about in terms of her commitment and her bravery and her skill levels and her talent, that she's able to do that. But why is she in that position that she has to play the 2 games in the one day? It's just not fair on the dual players. And what the in game is here, I just don't know. I really don't know what's going to happen, because there's another potential fixture clash on July 1st with both Cork teams in championship action on the same day. So will we be talking about it again? Possibly so. It seems that the powers that be have no interest of note to sort this out, which puts the dual players in a very tricky position. But I don't think anyone can look at what Libby did on Saturday, playing 2 games in different provinces, in 2 different codes on the same day, and say that's fair and that's right.
No, absolutely not. In other news as well, some good West Cork sport news here.
Great West Cork sport news.
West Cork sport news. History was made last week by the West Cork Academy when they won their 3rd, 4th place playoff at the Kennedy Cup. It's the highest finish a West Cork team has ever had in the prestigious competition up in UL, and it was a brilliant performance.
Oh, it's superb. Like, what a week this young team had up in UL. So it started off on Monday, went right through to Friday, and to finish 3rd out of, I think, was it 30 leagues or something like that. Incredible to think that the West Cork League was the 3rd best in the country, but they more than held their own against the so-called, or the best leagues and the bigger leagues right across Ireland. We touched on it, I think, in last week's podcast, that West Cork topped their group with 3 wins out of 3, and that was the first time ever West Cork had achieved that. Went into the quarter-final, won it on penalties, went into the semi-final on the Thursday, and they were so unlucky to lose by an incredible, I think it was a 25-yard effort.
I had the game on, it just in the background while I was working, and it was a volley that looped over the goalkeeper from 25 or 30 yards. Like, if there was a goal to beat them, that was the goal that was going to beat them. It was an incredible goal. Incredible
goal, and that was Midlands that beat West Cork 1-0. But that sent West Cork then through to the 3rd and 4th place playoff on Friday. And again, it went to penalties like the quarter-final, but again, West Cork came out on top, and young goalkeeper Dara Hurley was the hero with 2 penalty stops there. And so many heroes have emerged from West Cork, this West Cork team. Tom Whelly, the young Artfield striker, I think finished with 6 goals. Like, he'll never forget his 2023 Kennedy Cup campaign, and that's one of many heroes in this West Cork team. And each and every one of those squad members can be so proud of the role that they played in this, because this has really put the West Cork Academy on the map. Like, they finished 3rd in the
national map.
Oh, it's incredible. Like, it's great for soccer in West Cork, and it's great for the schoolboys and schoolgirls league. It's important to note that, because Emma Hurley from Drina Rangers was on the West Cork team as well. So, no, congratulations to everyone involved. We'll have a full page in this Thursday's Southern Star, and we're going to do follow-ups in the weeks to come as well, because we want to see what legacy this will create and how West Cork can build on what they achieved at the Kennedy Cup last week. So stick with the Star for the next few weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's important to note as well, we talk a lot on the podcast about people, like we had Luke Mead on, about how he's a role model for people, and the fact that he can make it to the Cork senior hurling team, like, opens the door for other people. But these kids as well should be looked at in the same manner. Like, future West Cork Academy teams can go to the Kennedy Cup and say, if they can do it, why not us?
That's exactly it, because we've seen it in West Cork sport over the last couple of years, and it really is a golden era for this corner of the country. West Cork is a class apart when it comes to sport and the variety of sport. We've seen it with the rowers, we've seen it with the rugby players, we've seen it obviously with GA. West Cork is a GA stronghold. We've seen it with athletics, with the likes of Phil Healy, Darren McElhinney, Joan Healy, Nicola Tuttle. Like, 3 of those 4 are in action at the European Games this week. And with soccer, with Conor Horan, just on the podcast a few weeks ago as well, what he achieved by becoming the first West Cork Premier League player, he showed what's possible. But you've also had a number of West Cork players play in the League of Ireland over the last couple of years, like from Denzel Fernandez, Ronan Hurley, and players of this ilk. But now, what schoolboys and schoolgirls level, they're seeing this under-14 West Cork team get to the business end of a national competition. So that's only going to whet their appetite, and it's just great for the schoolboys and schoolgirls league. And the hope is now that it's the start of more to come. You know, they've set a high bar now, a high standard. There's great work going on in the West Cork Schoolboys and Schoolgirls League, and the hope is that they can build on this.
Yeah, long may it continue. Now we're going to take a very quick break, but when we come back, we'll be hearing from Bantry kickboxer Tony Stephenson.
The Star Sport podcast is brought to you by Access Credit Union. Access Credit Union, funding dreams for over 50 years.
Now, welcome back to the Star Sport podcast. In just a moment, we're going to be hearing from Bantry kickboxer Tony Stephenson. But before we do, Kieran, Can you fill us in a little bit on what Tony is about and why the next few weeks are so important for him?
So Tony is one of the best kickboxers that West Cork has produced over the last number of years. And we spoke earlier in the podcast about how strong the various sports have been in West Cork. But kickboxing too and West Cork are very synonymous, because Ian Kingston, he's the man behind West Cork Kickboxing Club. He started up that club years and years ago. He's created a dynasty there, like an incredible club that churns out world and European champions. Some of the best kickboxers that Ireland have produced have come from West Cork, and they've come through the doors of West Cork Kickboxing Club. One is Lily Delacour, an incredible kickboxer who has won everything there is to win in the sport of kickboxing. And coincidentally, she's from Bantry, just like Tony Stephenson is. And Tony is another who's come through West Cork Kickboxing Club to go on and achieve great things. So he's a two-time WACO world champion and a two-time WACO European champion. And WACO is the name of the governing body that they compete under, because in kickboxing there's a number of different bodies, but WACO is the big one. It's the main one worldwide. So why this story now is so important is kickboxing is on a journey to become an Olympic sport, to be officially recognised in the Olympics. And whether that comes in LA in 2028 or the next games in 2032, we'll just have to wait and see. But part of this journey is that kickboxing is now part of the European Games. And for all Tony has achieved, like I said, world titles, European titles, he's won gold at various World Cups over the years. He sees this as the biggest event of his life, because he gets to wear the Team Ireland the tracksuit and the shirt which has the Olympic rings. He gets to represent Team Ireland on the international stage, and he's so proud of that. And he can't wait to fly out to Krackow next week when the kickboxing starts. So he's competing in his category, which is minus 79 kg. It's not the category that he won. He's gold world medals in. That was at 69 kg, but because this is a new sport at the European Games, there's only two men's categories in the light contact, so he's had to go up in two weights, but he's taken that in his stride. So he's one of 8 kickboxers that will be competing for a medal. And just in terms of his chances, he won a silver medal at the European Championships, last November in this category. So that you would think that it would put him in and around the medal conversation. You know, you can never be too confident in sport, because sport is sport, and it depends on the look of the draw as well. So he has a chance going over there. His journey, it's been an incredible journey. And if people want to check out an old podcast we did with Tony from a couple of years ago when he won a world title back in 2019, it's well worth checking out, because Tony's a great fella to chat to and a great fella to interview. And I think as well, it's important to point out a couple of key figures in his journey here. Obviously, his partner, Breed, has been huge support, and their two young girls. In Kingston, West Cork Kickboxing Club has been a huge mentor for him since Tony was 6 years of age and he started at the club. But also, I think it's important, Tony wants to thank two local politicians, Holly Cairns and Michael Collins, for helping him sort out his passport and citizenship over the last couple of months, which kind of opened the door for him to represent Team Ireland, because Tony was actually born in Manchester years and years and years ago, even though he's been in Bantry, for nearly all his life. So he needed a little bit of help, a little bit of local help to get him to where he is now. So he's very much appreciative of all the role that various people have played in his story to get here. So as you'll hear from Tony right now, he cannot wait to get over to Krackow and represent Ireland at the European Games. Before we chat about the competition itself, Tony, can you explain to us the significance of having kickboxing in the European Games?
It's huge. This is the first Olympic event that kickboxing will be part of. We've been part of the Olympic family now for a number of years. Not too many. We're very new on the scene, but this is the first. So I'm part of the first team to ever wear the Olympic rings. So this is huge for our sport. Like, this is like massive. This is a big, huge step. Like, I suppose the next thing would be getting into the Youth Olympics, and then the next, maybe even the actual Olympics then as well. But this is a huge first step. I'm one of the 9 athletes that gets to go away, represent Ireland in kickboxing for the first time and where the Olympic brings. So it's it's huge for our sport.
The word you mentioned there, Olympics, and our listeners will be obviously know what the Olympics is about. The Olympic Games, the biggest sport show in the world every 4 years. And kickboxing is on a journey now to be part of that. Can you explain to us what's happening?
I spoke to the president there about 5 weeks ago. He's Irish. He's the president of Kickboxing Ireland, and he's the president of Wacko Kickboxing, which is the biggest organization in the world for amateur kickboxing. We're now recognized by the Olympics. We're hoping that we're going to be in the 2028 games. Is it a strong chance? I don't believe so. I think it will come at a later date again, so it'll be past when my career is done. But it's looking like, we will one day be in the Olympics. If the earliest we could possibly be, from what I've been told, is 2028.
That's incredible. The kickboxing is on that journey, and you're now part of one of the major first steps for kickboxing. And you've been a world champion twice. You fought at world championship level, European championships, a lot of the WACO World Cup series. But to be part of the European Games in Krackow, where does that rank in terms of what you've achieved?
This is the furthest I've ever gone. So yeah, I've won world and European titles at my lighter weight back in, I think it was this time last year. No, it was about a year and a half ago. They announced that we're going to be part of the Games. They picked 2 weight classes for my discipline, and now I normally fight at the minus 69, which is welterweight, but they picked minus 79. So I went up. I was pretty much done my career then, up until then, in terms of like Wacko kickboxing. I had like you said, I won my world titles and my European titles. I'd gone as far as I could, and I was ready to hang up the gloves in that department and maybe try something different. But then this came about, and I was excited. For ages, we didn't know what weight classes they were picking. And I remember saying to Ian, if they pick this, I'm going to do this. If I'm this, I'm going to drop this weight. If they do this, I'm going to go to this. And then they picked 79, which was weird. It was because most men fit into the 69, 74 kg bracket. So it was weird that they picked 79 and minus 63. So I was too light for minus 63. So I decided to jump up to minus 79. So I've gone up 2 weight classes. So I went from 69 to then 74, then to 79. So this is the furthest I've been. This was the only reason I decided to do the qualifications. Like, I wouldn't have done the Europeans back in November if there wasn't something else to attain, which is going to an Olympic level event.
Like you said there, you've achieved everything there is to achieve in kickboxing, world titles, European titles, you name it, you've won it. But you feel this has re-energized you, the chance to do something different, the chance to be part of something special.
Yeah, it's a huge honor. Like there's so few, like there's only 8 people selected in each division that are allowed to go to the games. So it was really important for me to qualify and make sure I was in that top 8, which I was. I got second in November out in Turkey to qualify. So yeah, I'm very lucky. I'm very lucky. I have a good trainer behind me. I'm very lucky for my family supporting me, and I'm very lucky that I'm at this point in my career where I can see this in front of me, go for it, and know that I have the skill to get to that level I want.
You mentioned there, Tony, that you've jumped up in 2 weight classes because you had to compete at these European Games. How difficult is that to move 2 weight classes?
I think it's difficult. I've sparred with heavyweights before. Like, when it comes to being in the gym and training, you would spar heavier guys and smaller guys and stuff, and there's variations there. But it's always different than when you're actually at competition. Now, most of the guys that I fought out in Turkey there in November, when they were hitting me, I took up pretty well and I'd be pretty strong. But there's only one guy who's really like, okay, wow, this is different. Because he came down. So most of the guys I was fighting at 79 were well adjusted to minus 79 and were fighting at that weight a lot. But the last guy I fought, he came down 2 weight categories above So he came down from -89 to 79, and then he would have weighed in, and then 5 days later he would have fought me. So he would have put a bit of weight back on. So he's naturally bigger and stronger. So that was the only time where I was like, okay, there's definitely a little bit more to this guy's punches than everyone else. Everyone else I felt like I could handle. And it's just years of experience has helped me. And again, like I said before, I have a really good trainer, Ian Kingston. He just knows sport inside and out. He knows me inside and out. So for every fight we had a plan going in there, and it was just about me executing that plan. So like I was conscious about lads being heavier and maybe stronger moving up to that when I first decided to go for this. But as soon as I got settled into a few fights internationally and even nationally, I was like, you know what, this isn't that bad. They're not. The shots aren't too bad. I can take these. These are fine, and I'm definitely faster than a lot of these guys as well. So I had that advantage too. So yeah, the adjustment wasn't too much. Maybe just my style and how I approach people. If they're a big guy and a strong, I have to move a little bit more. I have to fake a little bit more. I can't be a static target for anyone anymore. So yeah, those were the adjustments.
You mentioned the Europeans last November. You won a silver medal there. Is that almost a good barometer for what you're going to expect out in Krackow? Because, like you said, there are just eight fighters, eight quality fighters here. But you got that silver medal not too long ago. So does that put you in the medal conversation? Does that give you confidence going to Krackow? Does that raise your expectations heading out to Poland?
Yeah, I definitely think I can get a medal. Definitely. I'm aiming for gold. I wouldn't do this if I didn't think I could get gold. Yeah, there's everyone who's in there, I pretty much have fought already, bar one or two. Yeah, so it depends. It depends on my draw. I know the guy who I lost to in Turkey for the qualifiers. I know that he's at the other end of the draw, so I'm not going to meet him until the final. So I'm kind of more concentrating now on everyone else because before I can get there, I've got to get through these guys. There's one or two that I haven't fought. One of them's really good. But me and Ian have a plan pretty much for everyone. And same with the national coach Des. We have plans set in place and tactics to work. But I'm pretty confident fighting anyone who's in the division. I wouldn't be afraid or backing down. It's just like the way my mentality is now is, a fight's a fight. Nothing's good or bad. Whatever it is, it's just my value judgment on it in the moment. I have to see what's in front of me, work with the tactics I'm given, and make the best decisions. And it's more like when I go to fight, it's more like about creating opportunities to score. That's where I take myself to a logical place when it comes to fighting, and I try and keep the emotions out and think, okay, each round is its own fight. So, I take one round at a time. I don't look at this fighter and then I have to fight this guy next, and then I have to fight this guy. I'm thinking my first round and my first fight out there, and that's it for now.
You mentioned one man there a couple of times in this conversation so far, Ian Kingston, is so heavily involved in West Cork Kickboxing Club. That's his baby. He's grown that club to become the World Championship, European Championship medal winning machine that it is. Talk to me about Ian, Tony, and how important he has been in your career.
Huge. He's by far the most influential factor in my career. I have a lot to owe Ian and be thankful for. He's trained me since I was 6 years old. He's gotten me to love a sport that maybe I didn't think I could when I was younger. I went into kickboxing because I wanted to get a bit more confidence. My parents wanted me to learn a bit of self-defense to get more confidence. And it was only years later when I showed like an aptitude and interest in sparring that he encouraged it. And from the environment he creates in the club, it really brought on people like myself, like Lily, other champions in the club to excel. So like I have a lot to be thankful and grateful for Green. He's an amazing trainer. He's an amazing role model. Like he is still a role model for me. Just all around, he's just a brilliant person, brilliant coach. And I'm just very lucky to have someone as a kind of person that Ian is and as knowledgeable as he is in my corner when I need him most, which is like these kind of fights, these events. So it's good. It's good. Like I know some guys chop and change trainers, and over the years they learn different things. It's really good. Like it's a real good advantage to have someone who is in your corner, who's known you since you were a little kid. They know how you operate, they know how you tick. And Ian knows me inside and out. And when he says something to me on command to fight, if he sees something, he knows exactly that I'm gonna listen, take it on board, use it. There's no miscommunication. Like we work really well as a team, just from years of working together.
That trust that you have in Ian, and obviously that Ian has in you, like you've developed that over years. Like you said, since you were what, 6 years of age, Ian has been coaching you. Like that trust must be key to this as well.
Yeah, no, it is. He supported me in everything I did. I remember when I had bad days in training when I was a kid, he would sit down and talk to me, and he would go through, like, he wasn't just someone who taught me how to kick and punch. He was, and he's not just that even now. He's like, if I come to him with like, oh, Ian, like I'm teaching this class and I'm having problems with this one kid or this one parent, I ask Ian, and Ian's really good for advice, and he's really good at like being logical, being direct. There's no like, what you see is what you get with him, and it's direct, and it's a brilliant way to work with someone, because my job is to teach kickboxing classes, and that's what Ian does. So I have that older mentor there to ask and to use as guidance for me, so that I can bring on my students as well. Just yeah, just throughout my life, he's helped me outside of kickboxing as well. It's not just been about fighting. It's not just a relationship where it's all about training and in the gym. Like, I'll go to him about advice about parenting or about my new house I'm trying to get for myself and my family or anything. And he's really good for that. So he's a very approachable person. He's a person that I can really confide in and trust. And yeah, you can only get that from someone who's very open and forthright.
Yourself and Ian, you share an incredible passage for the sport. It's obvious that you love the sport. You put so much in the kickboxing. Bigger picture for a second, Tony. What can this do for the sport? Let's say locally, you're the only Cork kickboxer on the Ireland team going to Krackow. You're the only Munster kickboxer on the team. So in terms of visibility, your students can see what you're achieving, how high you're going. That's great for them to see someone. I know Tony, who's gone to the European Games. Is the hope that this will shine a light in kickboxing, let's say locally in West Cork, and encourage more kids to try the sport and join the club and just see how great the sport is?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really good sport. It's an individual sport, so what you put into it, you get out of it. Even if you're not the best in the soccer team or the best on the basketball team, if you're not the best kickboxer, it doesn't mean you sit out on the bench. So there's no bench. Everyone takes part, and we have for like a little kid growing up, they get like learn really good, valuable life skills. I know when people think about kickboxing, they think about fighting, punching, kicking, sport. It teaches you self-defense, it teaches you discipline, focus, commitment, coordination, balance, flexibility. These things really then translate to other sports and other areas of your life that you then can apply to make you a better person. And like when you go through those places where things are like, it's one thing to lose a basketball match or a football match, but when you're in front of someone who is punching and kicking you in a competition, you do develop this toughness. You do develop this, okay, all right, this person there's no ball, there's no, someone's hitting me, I have to respond, I have to fight back. It really teaches you to become a tougher person all around. And I know that if I have 100 kids, maybe one of them might go into competition, but the rest, for them, the martial arts journey is important, that they learn those important values, like trying to become the toughest person you are on your the strongest person you are on your toughest day. And that's the way I approach martial arts. Is for one, what kickboxing has done for me, it's given me fitness. It's given me a chance to compete for my country. It's given me confidence and an inner strength. It's given me financial opportunity. And as well, like my mom passed away a few years ago, and I always thought like my mentality would always be tested from in competition, like against the better opponent, again in the moment of the world championship final. And no, like the hardest day of my life was when I had to say goodbye to my mom, and I was able to stand up straight, pull my shoulders back, help out with the family, get the day done, and I was my strongest version, my strongest self on my toughest day. And I look back at all that kickboxing has taught me, and that really did then make sense to me. Okay, all those years of pushing myself, going out my comfort zone, talking with Ian, reassessing what do I want, like how do I achieve my goals, how do I fight through the bad days of training. They all helped me deal with that. And so kickboxing is not just learning how to punch and kick. It's really way more than that. And that's what martial arts brings to young people. And it gives them structure, it gives them the discipline, and it definitely helped me in those areas of life. And I'm just so grateful I had the opportunity to be part of that.
And for our listeners to the podcast now, Tony, to learn more about the sport, can you break down what a fight entails in terms of rounds, minutes, the scoring, how it actually works?
Yeah, so we do so out in the European Games, all fights will be 3 2-minute rounds. They are you get points for scoring punches to the head and to the body. You get extra points for kicking to the head or jumping kicks to the body or jumping kicks to the head. So 1 point for a punch to the head, punch to the body, 1 point for a kick to the body, 2 points for a kick to the head, 3 points for a jumping kick to the body, and then I think it's like 5 points for jump spinning kicks to the head. We have, although it's hard contact, we have referees and judges who score, and there's medics and referees are out there to look out for the safety of the fighters. So it's more about scoring points than like knocking out. Although knockouts do occur, it's part and parcel of the sport. Most fights is about scoring. So the skill is distance, timing, and control. So distance is knowing how close you are to your opponent to get your scores, the type of kicks, and then the timing will be like you could have the fastest jab or the hardest kick in the world. It's no good to you unless you have the timing or know how when to throw it. And then the control is how you manipulate the fight, how you manipulate the flow of the fight by your fakes, by how well you use the ring. These are all things that add up to you winning. So they definitely would help you in scoring the most scores. So yeah, at the end of the 3 rounds, it's whoever has the most scores accumulated wins the fight.
Brilliant. And finally, I can see how much pride you're wearing that shirt with, and it's incredible to have that Team Ireland gear, not only for the week coming up in the championships, but for even after. But for you, Tony, to be part of a Team Ireland, the likes of Phil Healy from Ballineen, who's gone to the Olympics. There's some huge names in Irish sport going to compete in so many sports at these European Games. So for you to be part of this team, what does that mean to you?
Oh, it's just I'm just very proud. I'm just very grateful for being here. It's great to meet. It'll be great to meet other athletes and talk to them and find out their experiences and what it's like for them, and what strategies they have when they approach their competition day. Very proud to be one of the first few to wear the rings in my sport, and 2, it'd be really cool just to go out and meet the other athletes as well, and the other Irish athletes, and talk to them and just listen to them and just find similarities and differences in their training and their competition and their mental prep. I think it'd just be really cool. By far, this is one of the most proudest things I've ever done in my sport. Like this is the most proudest moment in my sport for sure.
Oh, fantastic. The very best to look over it. We'll all be rooting for you, Tony.
Thank you very much.
The Star Sport podcast is brought to you by Access Credit Union. Access Credit Union, funding dreams for over 50 years.
Welcome back again to the Star Sport podcast, and it's our favourite time of the week where we look ahead to what's on in this week's Southern Star Sport. Kieran, what are people in for?
So, huge weekend of GA coming up, like we saw earlier. So we have a preview, obviously, of Cork Roscommon. We also have on that dual dilemma. I caught up with Rena Buckley, the legendary Cork dual star. She won 18 All-Ireland medals, 11 in football, 7 in camogie. I just caught up with Rena to get her thoughts on on what's happening at the moment with this dual debacle still going on, to see what she thinks. So that's well worth checking out. And obviously we reports and reaction from the various inter-county games last weekend, bringing it closer to home. In the confined County Junior B Football Championship, we have a West Cork derby to look forward to. Plunkets are taking on Goleen in a couple of weeks, and our feature County Championship match this week was Plunkets' big win against Garnish. So it was Carberry against Beara. Plunkets came out on top, so Plunkets fans pick up Thursday Southern Star. We also have a comprehensive county league roundup where there was a lot of movers and shakers for West Cork clubs. So quick synopsis: Clonakilty missed out on promotion to Division 1 of the County Football League, and Newcestown just pipped them on scoring difference. But both of them almost fell over the line. So Carrigaline, who are the table toppers, beat Newcestown on Sunday, so they guaranteed their promotion. So that left Newcestown kind of hanging on, because Clonakilty were playing later in the day against Clyde. So Clonakilty knew if they beat Clyde that they'd get promoted. But Clonakilty couldn't get the job done. They were behind by 4 points at half-time. They came back and led by a point in the second half, but they ended up drawing with Clyde. So it left both Newcestown and Clonakilty on the same amount of points. And since they drew in the league earlier, it came down to scoring difference, and Newcestown just squeezed through. So
skin of their teeth.
Fine margins there. So good news for Newcestown going up, but bad news in Division 3. Island Rovers have been relegated after they lost to Rockchapel. So we've all that in Thursday Star. We also have an interview with Saskia Wycherley. She was presented with a West Cork Sports Star Youth Quarterly Award recently. So Saskia is the younger sister to Munster stars Josh and Fineen, and she's another huge rugby talent, and she's just started training with the Munster senior women's rugby team as well. So it's an interview worth checking out. We've other loads of bits and pieces in there, including the Drina Rangers management dream team of Don Hurley and Declan DC are stepping aside. As the song goes, they've seen it all, they've won it all. Together, I think they've guided Drina to 11 Premier Division titles, 4 Beamish Cups, and a load of other trophies as well. So they've decided that the time is right to step aside. So we've news of that and a lot more as well. It's a packed Southern Star.
Yeah, hopefully for Drina, it's not a Man United situation with David
Moyes coming in.
Yeah, well,
it was actually interesting to see when the news came out on social media. I think it was Friday. The Clonakilty Soccer Club, very tongue-in-cheek, they commented, "Thank God, enjoy retirement." So I think a lot of West Cork League teams out there will be hoping that this will signal the beginning of the end of Drina's domination. But I think Drina will be eager to keep hold of their vice-like grip of the West Cork League. So an interesting season to look forward to next year already.
Yes, only time will tell. In this week's Southern Star as well, we also have, outside of sport, a things to see and do guide for West Cork in 2023. It's our popular supplement. Every year there's over 150 things to see and do, including a What's On guide for all the areas in West Cork as well. So that's well worth picking up. It's free inside this week's edition. And we're also revealing the 10 finalists for West Cork's Cutest Pet. So there'll be a public vote on that starting on Thursday when the finalists are revealed. So get your votes in when that does open up. All of that will be available in shops across West Cork from Thursday morning. And as always, if you're further afield or you can't make it to the shops, you can subscribe to the Southern Star and get it on your laptop, tablet or phone. Just go to subscribe.southernstar.ie, enter your details, and you'll get an exact replica of the newspaper for less than €2 per week. As always, thanks for listening to the Star Sport podcast. And thanks again to our sponsors at Access Credit Union. If you've enjoyed this, please remember to rate, review and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and we'll be back again next week.